Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our countdown webinar to the National Day of Service and the King Day of Service 2013. We're so glad that you took an hour out of your afternoon to join us, and more importantly, we're really glad that you're out across the country organizing service projects and helping people get involved to make a big difference in their communities. Joining us on the call today are Ted Miller. Ted is our Acting Chief of External Affairs, Samantha Warfield, also our Acting Press Secretary, and Jasmine Touton, who is from Program Associate at Campaign Consultation. Campaign Consultation is a technical assistance provider that supports us on these National Days of Service. Before we get started on the content, I want to go over a couple of a few housekeeping items. If you have a question when we come to the Q&A portions of our call, please press *1 on your telephone keypad and you'll be placed in the Q&A queue. At any point during the webinar, you can include comments in the chat feature to the right or questions in the Q&A feature, and we will answer those as quickly as possible. Some of them we may refer to in the oral portion of the webinar as well. At the end of the presentation, the PowerPoint will be emailed to you and posted online for all participants. And if you have any questions after the webinar, please contact MLK Day at campaignconsultation.com. They can answer any questions about the webinar. Our objectives for this webinar are to provide potential inauguration-related activities and messaging coordination for you, discuss best practices for your final countdown week and your media relations, and share tips for final week of project planning, and to really get you to think now about the day of needs for your project, if you haven't already. Please assume that when we talk about MLK Day this year, we are also including the National Day of Service on the 19th of January and vice versa. We in the National Service community know that many of you may have already planned events on the 21st before the National Day of Service was announced. We are connecting the two. The Inaugural Committee is also connecting serving in honor of Dr. King. So please know that when we talk about one, we are including both of those. Now I'd like to turn it over to Ted and Samantha to talk about the inaugural-related activities.
Oh, thanks, Rhonda, and thanks to everyone who's joined the call today. I know that there's a lot of activity going on across the country, and it's wonderful to have people together one last time to go over some key points regarding what makes this MLK weekend especially significant in that it falls and coincides with a presidential inauguration that, of which service will be a key part. So I think that much as it was 4 years ago in 2009, there's a huge opportunity, and especially big opportunity for service to be front and center in media coverage and on the public consciousness because of the MLK Day of Service and a day of service tied to the inauguration. So I think that in terms of what we wanted to talk to you today is that we wanted to make sure that, and I think you've seen in the materials that we've sent out most recently, the message materials, is that we know that the public that we're talking about, or some people we're reaching, whether it be the public at large or people who might be interested in volunteering, or even some of the folks who are close to our organizations or people with whom we work closely, that to just reduce the amount of confusion and think of this in terms of one banner, one weekend, one giant weekend of service across the country, rather than trying to explain the difference between the President's National Day of Service and MLK weekend. I think we've seen, and we've worked really hard with the Presidential Inaugural Committee to incorporate references to MLK in all of the materials that they're sending out. And just so you know, we're having consistent conversations with them to make sure that their coordination is moving forward and that they know about the events that you all are doing across the country, and that there is collaboration on that front so that the messaging is consistent. And I think in terms of the messaging, the key points are to say, the messages that we've sent out, really it's about citizenship and service in action. And I think that in subsequent slides, we'll talk more about the nuts and bolts of what the media outreach is, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what we're doing here to get the word out. We're working, as I said, closely with the inaugural committee folks to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of making sure that we're getting regional press attention for events that are outside the D.C. area, both on Saturday as well as those that are scheduled on Monday. But I also would just say to you, to looking for timelines and things that you'll be seeing from us at CNCS, is that early next week on the 14th or 15th, we'll do a national press release touting all of the MLK events that are going on across the country. We'll give our national media list and regional media the link to the registered events on the MLK website, the Day of Service website. So that'll be a good guide for reporters that are looking for a local hook on service projects that, as they write about the weekend of service. So that's to give you a sort of a top-tier timeline what we're looking at doing here. I think in terms of overall media, I just think that the more that we can sort of tie in the weekend together, the weekend of service across the country, the better off we are. I think it's easier for people to understand. And I think another thing is when we look at what kind of what we want to get after having pulled off these service events, as we've talked to in previous webinars and in person at some of the events, we want to have more people who are with us than when we started, more people with the organizations that are associated with us, have some tangible evidence of making an impression in the press, whether on television or in online sources, and making sure that at the end of the day, all the organizations involved have, or all of us who are involved have something to build on for next year when we do the Day of Service, as well as all the service projects that take place across the year, so we're continually getting media coverage and leveraging these events to gain secure media coverage and also grow the presence of service on social media. So in terms of social media, let me turn it over to Sam Warfield, who can sort of talk through what we're doing on our end here. And then at the end of our little piece, we'll have a couple of key reminders for you, open the phone for some questions specifically for us, and then the webinar will keep moving forward.
Hi, folks. Again, thanks for joining. As Ted mentioned before, we're working very closely with those folks, the folks over at the Inaugural Committee, to try and tie this all into one big service weekend. One way, particularly with social media, that I think is going to be a really fun and easy way for us and then for all of you all to do that is to chime into this, to the kind of Twitter campaign they're using. So they are using a hashtag IServe, so the letter I and serve, and they're asking folks to take a picture or share why it is that they serve. So as you go along with your, your traditional social media that you might do for your project, adding that in will help pull you into the conversation around the Day of Service and the inaugural folks, and they're looking to engage with folks who are sharing those. As always, we love to see your messages and your photos and all of that content, but I think that's going to be the key way to connect those, to connect the two on social media. Oh, I think we have a few more resources for you before we hand it off around the project piece. I won't read through the slides because you have them and you can refer back to them. But as we look towards MLK Day, and I think we're, what, 10 days away now?
Yeah.
10 days. Make sure, we say this like a gazillion times, make sure that your project is in the search engine on mlkday.gov. We're also working closely with the folks of the Inaugural Committee to be sure that opportunities are cross-listed, so if you upload them in the MLK Day search engine, those will also appear on the PIC website as well. That way, because they are encouraging folks to not only serve here in DC in the mall, but in their state as well. We do have the search widget available if you'd like to use that. For media specifically, in timing, we find it works really nicely to get your advisory out a few days before. And if you know there are folks who have covered you in the past, just to make a few quick follow-up phone calls. Most of your projects will start well before, particularly with TV, before they will meet to have their editorial meeting. So making that connection before the day of is going to be really key in getting you, TV coverage. Have your advisory available online. That can sometimes be a tricky thing. They may have heard about it and want to try and find it, so that's a good way to do that. Have your press kits ready. We have fact sheets and all sorts of resources that are also available, but in general, our rule of thumb here is keep it simple. The fewer pieces of paper, the better. And this is always, I've definitely had events where this has been the case, and we've been working so hard to pull the event off without a hitch. We forget to think about where folks, particularly media, are going to come in and sign in and to have a sign, and so they're wandering around and who knows who they're talking to. So being sure to identify in advance who is the person that's going to speak to them, do they feel comfortable and have sort of the message points they have, and also where can media check in? Do you have a sign? Do they know where to go? And making sure that the right phone number is out there. One more plug I want to make. Tomorrow, Thursday, we are hosting our first CNCS Twitter chat. We're calling them online office hours. We will have a special guest, our CEO, Wendy Spencer. So she will be talking a good portion of that about MLK Day and the Day of Service. We encourage you to submit your questions or even your comments, or if you just want to shout out. We're using the hashtag AskWendy, and so we'd love to see some MLK Day participation as well.
Okay, thanks, Sam. And just before we go to any questions, just on terms of keeping us updated, there are really two email addresses to remember. MLKday@cns.gov, and press office, if you have specific media questions, press office, all one word, at cns.gov is the other address. So I think we're ready to just accept any questions from the participants.
Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1. Please unmute your phone and record your name when prompted. Your name is required to introduce your question. To withdraw your request, please press *2. Once again, to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name. One moment, please.
Hi, Ted. While we're waiting for the operator to compile the questions, we had one in the queue, and they would like to know which days are for the Twitter iServe hashtag campaign. Is that the whole weekend or just one day?
I think that they're really hoping that this will start to gain steam, so you can use it as soon as possible. You could start today. You could share, a different volunteer each day. I might think forward to the next 10 days, what content makes sense. Maybe do one today, one on Friday, and kind of ramp it up that way. You can, a volunteer profile might be good. You could even do it as top 10 reasons to volunteer on MLK Day, include the iServe hashtag. So you could think about kind of cute and fun, creative ways to do that without having to just answer the question and feel like you're answering the question over and over.
And Samantha, is there a way that they should identify themselves in the post that helps us promote national service better?
Yeah, I think, it will help us if you use both. I would always use both iServe and MLK Day, because that way it'll connect for folks. MLK Day and Day of Service, like, we're getting it. There's a lot of business happening around this weekend, and so that will also ensure that we see it. Mentioning at MLK Day also helps because that will ping one of us here, so we'll get to see that as well.
And just looking at the screen, it looks like we have a question. Sam, can you just remind everybody of Wendy's handle for tomorrow's Twitter chat?
Wendy's handle is Wendy CNCS. We are hosting the chat from National Service. So that handle is at National Service, all one word. And Wendy will be joining us. We'll be answering your questions with the hashtag AskWendy, so that if you're using a dashboard, that can also be a great way to follow a conversation.
And for some folks who are not as familiar with Twitter as maybe others, with @Wendy CNCS.
Yes. The at symbol and then Wendy CNCS.
Sorry, and then if we have Ask Wendy as the # Ask Wendy, as far as if you're submitting a question for that town hall, right? Okay. Do we have any other questions from the audience or the participants?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all for joining. It's great to be partners and making sure that national service gets even more gets so much attention in the coming weeks. And just a reminder, any questions on media, press office, all one word, at cns.gov. General questions about MLK Day can be addressed to MLKday, all one word, at cns.gov.
So thank you, Ted and Samantha. Now we'll turn it over to Jasmine to proceed with the rest of our webinar.
Thanks, Rhonda. While we're on the subject of media and messaging, I wanted to go back to sort of how you determine your media messages in relation to you know, how you're talking about your projects in the final week and on the day of MLK Day. Think about if your messages should include the value of service in addressing social problems. Make sure you're including how your work connects to Dr. King's life, teachings, and values. Also, you can now sort of connect your King Day and the inaugural National Day of Service together, some of what Ted was speaking about earlier. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see where you can go for a sample media advisory and press release and other national media messages. And actually, Ted and Samantha put together a great toolkit for you that will be sent out as a link in the PowerPoint immediately following this webinar. So for media on MLK Day, make sure to provide a separate media sign-in table if possible, where the media can actually come and pick up press kits and connect with spokespeople. It's important that when you're inviting media that they know where to go and how to find you so that they can actually cover what they're showing up for. Make sure that you have the answers to questions like, why is this project necessary? Also, reporters love numbers, so if you can have any of those on hand, like how many garden beds you plan to plant in or anything like that, how many volunteers are serving, how many served last year, all of those things are good things for reporters to start with if they're planning on reporting on your projects. Spokespeople, that's really important to have, and they should be well versed in the workings of your agency, the community needs that the project addresses, and how your project relates to your year-round work and to the National MLK Day of Service. So now we're going to move on to actual sort of our top tips for final week project planning. We know that you're all sort of ready to start your projects, so there's a few things to consider, and these are the top 10 ones that we've compiled from different advice and over the years from different experiences. So our first tip is don't lose sight of the goals of your MLK Day and inaugural National Day of Service project. So your project, regardless of how it's evolved since you began planning, should address one or more of these things. And now is sort of the time to reevaluate what your project accomplishes in the final week. This will help you speak with your volunteers about what they are doing to address the community need. This will help you build capacity for your organization. It'll help your volunteers grow as individuals, and it'll help us all to recognize the courageous work of Dr. King. Evaluating these goals will also help you if you need to add in any last-minute projects. So you can reconsider the activities and think about how you can work to make them fit with the desired outcomes. So our second tip is, if you haven't yet, definitely consider creating a schedule for your MLK Day of Service during MLK Day and post-MLK Day. And to the right of your screen, you'll actually see we have some sample templated prep day charts. And if you aren't planning a prep day, you might want to consider doing that. And this is something you can actually find online at mlkday.gov, and it will be a link that's included with this PowerPoint when we send it out afterwards. So when you create your schedule, share the schedules with all your managers and team leaders beforehand. This will be really helpful to make sure you're all on the same page. A detailed schedule will help you coordinate things like transportation, how are all your volunteers getting there, food and supplies, arrivals, where your volunteers are and when they're showing up, and when and how vendors are going to get there, as well as security and entertainment. So tip 3, visit your project sites in the final week of planning with team leaders. So why do we say the final week? Some of you may have only visited your site when you secured it. You may have visited it only a month ago. Regardless, visit your project site in the final week of project planning to ensure that nothing unexpected has happened there at the site. It's also the perfect opportunity to bring team leaders along to get them familiar with working with each other and at the project site. It allows you to ensure all equipment and supplies needed are on site and scheduled to be delivered. It allows you to review the projects to be completed and whether they will actually still work in that space. And it allows you to assess things like where the bathrooms are, electrical outlets, parking situations, and more. So tip number 4, check the number of volunteers needed against the number of volunteers that have signed up for either your MLK Day or Inaugural Day of Service project. You may see a spike or a lack of volunteers in your final week of planning. Most usually do. So if you do, you're going to want to revise expectations for tasks that can be completed based on the number of volunteers available. Be realistic about what can be completed to avoid starting something like building a garden shed for your community garden that you know can't be completed. If you are looking for volunteers, you can consider passing out event flyers, emails. You can go on social media to try to recruit more volunteers. Maybe if you're really strapped, you ask your current volunteers to bring a friend with them to help you out on that day. Another idea is to break projects up into smaller pieces if you're lacking volunteers. And you could, for example, with the garden shed, if you could separate groups out that plan the shed, build it, frame it, and then if there's time, you can have a group that does the finishing touches. This allows each group to work on one part of the project, but it won't leave any volunteer feeling disappointed if they can't finish a larger project. So the 5th tip, it may seem like common sense, but it is MLK Day and many businesses are closed. So make sure you have all the materials you need before the actual day of service. Think about, can people get to the site? And is it accessible? Maybe public transportation is closed. If the building is usually closed for MLK Day, will it still have facilities like bathrooms and kitchens, water? Did you ask participants to bring their own water bottles maybe, or even their own food, their own snacks? And will you be able to get last-minute printing done on that day? If you're planning to pass out guides and you realize you don't have enough, you may want to think on the Friday before about printing extra. For the 6th tip, we want you to assign one or more team leaders to greet volunteers at the door and explain where to go. I think this is one of the most important things, and it's a great way to maintain your MLK Day volunteers beyond the day of service and dispel any anxiety or confusion that the volunteer may have before he or she enters the room. The best way to combat this is to make a point to assign someone or multiple people to be volunteer greeters. And this is not just the person who says hello at the door, that's always great, but actually takes that volunteer to the place they will be working or provides that volunteer with specific directions about where to go. It's really amazing how motivating it is to feel that you are expected. So do your best to take that volunteer as far as you can and offer your help with answering any questions as well. For tip 7, definitely if you haven't already, prepare your volunteer sign-in sheet in advance. And actually include more than just the contact information. You could also include a photo release approval and approval to receive information about future projects. You can use a well-crafted volunteer sign-in sheet to cut back on paperwork and let the volunteer get through the process as quickly as possible when they arrive on site. Ask for contact information, and we recommend that you ask for more than one form just in case something is illegible, so maybe an email and a phone number, so that you can thank volunteers after the day of service and also stay in touch about the successes of the project. You also want to have volunteers sign up for some sort of photo release to be able to capture pictures of them on the day of without having to track them down for permission later. And so a great way to do this is just to include a checkbox on the form or maybe another signature sheet that lets them give you permission to take pictures of them. You could also add a checkbox that will allow volunteers to indicate whether they want to receive future information. I think they'll really appreciate this one because those that are looking to come back will definitely know that you'll be in touch. For tip 8, we recommend that you print up flyers on how to operate basic equipment, keep things safe and sanitary, and any other tips needed to successfully implement volunteer service tasks. So don't assume that all volunteers know how to use telephone systems, cash registers, copiers, faxes, even paintbrushes, or installing smoke alarms. Save your team leaders time on the day by printing up directions that volunteers can keep nearby. It's also a good idea if you are working with food or heavy equipment in some sort of insecure environment to print up safety directions. For example, if you're working in a soup kitchen, hand out instructions about how to properly wash your hands and pull your hair back. Printing instructions in addition to an orientation is also helpful in case that volunteers sign up at the last minute or are unable to attend the orientation. So for tip 9, send a reminder notice to those volunteers that have signed up, telling them the time and location of the project and directions if possible. We know your volunteers are only human, and many are likely to forget, especially if they signed up early on for the volunteer opportunity. So sending a reminder in the final week will also help show your volunteers that you're ready for them and that you're excited for the event. And tip 10 is an important one because I think we've all been there. Assign a small group to ensure that the site is cleaned up at the end of the service project if needed. In the week before MLK Day, it's probably most important that you have a small group assigned, and if you do not have a small group assigned, you may find yourself cleaning up alone at the end of the day, and that could take a while. So now that you've completed your top 10 tips for final week project planning, fast forward to your actual day of service. Your project day is here. So, of course, get there early. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Have sign-up sheets printed out or online registration ready well before you expect your volunteers to arrive. And with sign-up sheets, we recommend that you print out multiples because you may have multiple people, registering people, and there may be a rush of people coming in at one time. With online registration, just make sure you check those power sources, make sure there's a place to actually set up your laptops or whatever you're using for online registration. Have materials about your organization and Dr. King. So make sure that you have some sort of information about your organization, maybe an annual report or a pamphlet. And it's also nice to have information available about Dr. King and King Day. Make sure to inform the people as they arrive about upcoming events and volunteer opportunities. So this is important that, you know, throughout the day and as people arrive that you're informing them so that at the end of the day, once people are tired and they're ready to leave, they already have in their heads how they can continue to help out and become a long-term volunteer with your organization. And, of course, stay positive. As for any service event or any event, you always want to prepare for the unexpected, and we all hope that none of this happens, but you want to prepare for the worst. So know the location of the nearest emergency facilities, whether that's hospitals or who to call. Also have a first aid kit if possible and someone trained to use it at each of your sites. Maybe it's nice to have somebody who knows CPR or anything has any sort of medical training so that they can step in when needed. Also know how to incorporate early or late arriving volunteers. That's always an important one, and you know you're going to get some early or late volunteers. So maybe they can help out with greeting, or maybe they can help out preparing, you know, some of the tasks for the day. An unexpected volunteer turnout, whether that's high or low, and that's where it can help to have projects broken down into smaller pieces. If you have a low turnout, if you have a high turnout, definitely backup projects are really helpful. Maybe you could do writing letters to troops or something simple that you could plan in this final week. And obviously delays. Maybe you could build in a pre-reflection component to your project if it's delayed for any reason. So while the day is happening, we want to be sure you are documenting your event, and I'm sure Sam and Ted would really appreciate that as well. And this will help you as well as help tell the larger story of MLK Day. So where to share? For posting, you can actually share information about your project and its impact on facebook.com/MLKDay, and we hope that you all become fans of that page by now so that you can easily go there and share that on the day. Tweeting, if you're on Twitter, you can tweet up-to-the-minute information on MLK Day or the Inaugural Day of Service project. Be sure to include that hashtag MLK Day. Now we have that hashtag IServe as well. And some people are using the hashtag inauguration for the Inaugural National Day of Service event. If you're not on Twitter or Facebook or choose to share over email, you can do that. Send 1 to 2 paragraphs about your MLK Day or National Day of Service projects and the impact that those projects have had on your community to mlkday@cns.gov. In that, make sure you include the subject line MLK Story and insert the name of your project so we know what the project is and it doesn't get lost. And with that, I would also say make sure your contact information is also included, whether it's an email address or a phone number, so that we can follow up with you if it's a great story that we want to share with a larger audience. So what to share? There's a couple different things you can share, and please share as much as you feel necessary. But one idea is that you can just share the type of project, its location, and the lead organization. And this is just so we know who you are, and you can see an example of what that might be on your screen. You could also share information about the project, volunteers, or accomplishments. So an example of that would be today's MLK Day National Day of Service project is expected to build 100 beds for low-income youth in Frankfort, Kentucky. You could also summarize the overall accomplishments of the day, including any great quotes. So if you have a community leader like the mayor that's joining you, or even a longtime volunteer, and you can take the time to jot down a quote from them on that day, that's a great thing to share with us, and it's actually a great thing to share with the press as well. And don't forget to send pictures. We know you're all taking great pictures of the day, and we'd love to see how everything is going. And we're hoping that we can follow the story kind of on the MLK Day Facebook page this year. It is enabled for you to post your photos there. So make sure to go to facebook.com/MLKDay and like the page, and then you can simply visit the page while you're at your project site or just after, and actually upload a photo even from your phone onto the page so that we can all see sort of what's going on around the country. I think it'll help generate excitement for the day. So some tips for ending your day after you've documented it and you've gone through the press and the project. Here are some tips for how to sort of wrap things up. Have team leaders around when the volunteers' day is over. I think this is really important. We're all kind of tired by the time the service day is over and volunteers are leaving, but don't take off at the end, and make sure you stay around to wrap things up for even the final volunteer. This is about making sure every volunteer is feeling needed and feeling like your organization is there to help wrap things up. Team leaders should review work completed and give some feedback, and if it's good work, tell them so. I think making volunteers feel good about their work will make them come back again. Verify the next time the volunteer might be coming, if applicable, and express pleasure at having them as a new member of the team. So this is a good thing to start doing early on in the day. Definitely don't push it too much, but if somebody seems interested in the opportunities, it might be good to make sure you have their contact information correct, exchange cards if possible, or just make sure that they know next time they can come and volunteer. Let MLK Day be the beginning of a long-term volunteer relationship. This speaks to sort of mentioning those volunteer opportunities throughout the day, but just letting them know that you hope that they come back again. And of course, always appreciated, high fives. If you have some t-shirts to pass out, thumbs up, or maybe just a group picture to end things would be a great way to end the day. When you're ending the day, we hope that you're all thinking of providing a space for reflection. And reflection can really take place before, during, and after activities. But it is a key component of the MLK Day of Service. It allows the volunteer to have the place to reflect on how their efforts actually really connect back to Dr. King's work and teachings and back to the inaugural day of service. So we actually have 2 new resources available for you, and they will be linked out, again, in the PowerPoint just following this webinar. The first is the Scholastic Spirit of Service Lessons, and this includes reflection questions that were designed for 3rd through 8th grades, but you really can take these questions and adapt them for slightly younger or older age groups. The other one for adults, Renewing America Together, and that includes a thought-provoking sort of dialogue and questions for communities that can be used as a half-day kind of activity. But this also could be adapted as sort of post-service project reflection activity. So we hope that you find both of these pieces helpful to talk about active citizenship and connecting sort of with our democracy as part of both MLK Day and the inaugural tie-in. But at this point, we'd like to pause and ask for any questions that we might have from the audience about any of the things that we've discussed so far, and just in general about final week project planning.
Once again, to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and record your name when prompted. One moment, please.
So I see a question in the queue, and maybe we can speak a little bit more to this. The President's Inaugural Committee is asking us to post events on their website. Is there any way MLKday.gov events can be populated on the Presidential Inaugural Committee's website? Rhonda, do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The Presidential Inaugural Committee is also asking us to post events on their website. Is there any way MLKday.gov events can be populated on the Presidential Inaugural Committee's website?
We've been trying to work that out, but we haven't worked it out yet. We've been trying to work out getting a feed from an XML feed from All for Good to the Presidential Inaugural Committee site. I think that conversation was actually happening today, I hope, between All for Good and the Presidential Inaugural Committee. So we may know something by tomorrow, but I don't have an answer yet.
And we do have a question from the phone lines. From Julia, your line is open.
Hello. I had a question about press kits. I haven't had a chance to step away from the webinar screen here to search them myself, but are there any specific things that should be included in press kits?
Well, there's 2 main things that we have available, and I think we sort of give you some examples, but the media advisory and the press release are 2 of the main sort of pieces that you could include, and they are available on MLKday.gov and will be available as linked to this presentation. But some other ideas would be any fact sheets about your organization. I think the important part is putting in information both about MLK Day and about, and about your own organization. So.
Oh, I get it. Mm-hmm.
Are there more questions on the line?
Our next question comes from Joyce. Your line is open.
Yes, my question has to do with being tied into the Presidential Inauguration Committee. A person asked a question, I think, a few minutes ago, and you mentioned that they were meeting on that today. When will the information be available, and how will we be updated on that information?
Of whether the transfer will happen or not?
No, relevant to us typing into the Presidential Inauguration, the committee information?
I don't understand what you're asking, and I'm having a hard time hearing you, too.
Okay, I was a little late joining, but the first question had to do with the President's Inauguration Committee, relevant to us being tied into that activity. And you mentioned something about they were they were meeting.
Okay, so the first person asked if the projects that you all have registered with us could be automatically populated to the Presidential Inaugural Committee website.
Right.
And we have not been able to work that out yet, but people are trying.
Okay, you said they were meeting on it today. Are you going to send us information with the updates
as soon
relevant to if that's going to happen?
As soon as we know something, anybody that's signed up for this webinar can be notified.
Oh, okay. Okay, very good.
Thank you. Sorry I misunderstood.
Thank you.
There are no further questions at this time.
All right, we have another question actually in the Q&A queue, so we'll give a few more minutes for questions. Will you cover examples of project ideas or activities that tie into MLK Day and the inaugural celebration? The reflection activities that we just reviewed are a good way to sort of take what you're already doing, since we know most of you probably have already planned a project for MLK Day, and have that sort of citizenship democracy tie-in. So both the reflection activities, the one for youth and for adults, can sort of be adapted to be used for that. And our suggestion would be adopt those for sort of a post-service activity, and speak to how that fits with the inauguration. I don't know, Rhonda, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Are there any further questions at this time?
There are no further questions.
Great, well, we can go ahead and move on. There are some promotional materials that are still available to you at mlkday.gov. If you're looking for other things to sort of add to your project, we have a poster that is downloadable that you can download now to hang up at your project. There are some PSAs available, and there's a Drum Major of Service Award postcard. If you are planning to give out a Drum Major Award and are looking for something to sort of inform the audience about that, you can go ahead and download the postcard as well. There's also an updated MLK Day video that is, I just heard now live on the site. It's the MLK Day of Service Legacy video, and it features Bernice King, the daughter of Dr. King, and Wendy Spencer, the CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service. So yes, the updated video is available now, and you will get this link after the presentation so that you can go there and use it as you need. You could show it before your project or after your project, and sort of get people excited about the day.
It still features Congressman John Lewis and former Senator Harris Wofford and Reverend Lowry and Ruby Bridges as well. We just added in Reverend Bernice King and Wendy Spencer.
Great. So it has a number of sort of great speakers on the video as well. And of course, as a reminder, these are the official MLK Day links, facebook.com/MLKDay and twitter.com/MLKDay. Make sure you go there. Make sure you're using the hashtag MLKDay. And actually going back to the question earlier about how to sort of tie the inaugural activities together with MLK Day, this video we just mentioned would be a great tie-in for sort of connecting inaugural activities back to MLK Day. So now you'll see a poll opening to the right of your screen. I'm going to pass it off to Stephanie to go over feedback.
Hey, Jasmine, thanks. If everyone can complete the short poll on the right-hand side of your screen, we appreciate any feedback that you can share. You can also share in the chat feature any other resources or information that we can provide you to assist you in these last week or so for your MLK Day planning. Everyone registered for this webinar will receive the PowerPoint by email, and we'll also be posting it to mlkday.gov. A closed caption recording of this PowerPoint will also be posted to mlkday.gov. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at mlkday@campaignconsultation.com with any questions.
Thanks. At this point, I'd like to pass it back to Rhonda to wrap things up.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Please, please, please send us your questions. Let us know about your projects. Use the social media channels, post pictures. It's the way that we're able to help tell your story and add the national perspective to it. We know that if a tree falls in the forest, it still falls and lots of good work gets done, but your examples really are important to encourage others to join you in service, not just on King Day, but throughout the year. So thank you for what you do every day, but be prolific in publicizing it too, because someone will join you and be inspired to do more in their communities, and that's the goal we're all aiming to achieve. So thank you. Look forward to hearing about all your great work.
And we did have another question come up.
Okay, good.
From Brian, your line is open.
Yeah, I was wondering, because we were kind of toying with the idea of doing a Drum Major Award, but this is only the second year we've done it. Did you have any ideas on how to award, or a good way of putting that award to volunteers or things of that nature?
You know, if you have someone in your community that's really an unsung hero, that's always a good person. And, you know, it's a great way to kick off or close your service project by honoring someone who's made a big commitment to serve over their lifetime, or without whose support you really couldn't have gotten the project done. There are two versions of the Drum Majors for Service. One is based on hours a person has served, like the President's Volunteer Service Award. The other one is really for the unsung hero that is just a certificate. So I just encourage you to think about moments during the course of your day, your service project, that an award like this could provide a lot of inspiration.
One other idea is that if you want to sort of involve the larger community, you could actually ask your volunteers to sort of vote for somebody, make it a contest and ask your volunteers to vote for somebody in the community who they feel needs to be sort of lifted up. And so that might be a way that you could find somebody to honor for the Drum Major Award.
Thank you. Those are both good ideas.
Great. Are there any other questions on the line?
There are no further questions at this time.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We hope that you all have a successful MLK Day and inaugural day of service. And thanks again for joining this webinar.